How are you doing, green industry business leaders? This is episode number 8 of the Green Industry Profits Podcast, where we talk about how green industry companies can grow in a profitable way. In today's episode, we had a conversation with Brian Fullerton, Brian's Lawn Maintenance. We dive into what separates great companies from unsuccessful ones, marketing tips, what it means to have a great culture, key changes he made to improve his company, and much more. And before we dive into this episode, just a quick note that this podcast is brought to you by Cycle CPA, a remote accounting firm that works specifically with green industry businesses. For more information, go to cyclecpa.com. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode. All right, super excited for this episode. I got Carly here joining me here at within Cycle CPA, and Brian Fullerton from Brian's Lawn Maintenance probably doesn't even need an introduction, but I think he's had a pretty amazing journey within the green industry. Helps a lot of people within the industry as well, and we really appreciate you joining us today, Brian.
Hey, absolutely, brother. We've been catching up for about 15 minutes before we even hit record. It's fun catching up with friends. It's fun catching up with peers and folks with your professional background. Every time I get around folks that are smarter than myself, I always feel better about myself. So thank you for everything that you guys are doing in the industry as well. So honored to be here, excited to be here, and I'm sure it'll be a really good time.
Absolutely, thanks, Brian. And we're looking forward to joining you as well in Entrepreneur Academy Live
Yeah.
later this year. That's on November 2nd, right?
November 2nd, Novi, Michigan. If you know, you know. If you don't know, grab a ticket now because they sell, man. They sell fast. We got a big room, so I don't want to say they're going to sell out. But last year, I think there was about 400 people there, and Carl and Joseph were there rocking the stage, talking about knowing your numbers and so much more. Yeah, it's going to be good, brother. And we can't wait to have you guys back. I know it's an airplane ride for you guys for the most part, right?
Yeah.
So we're excited about having you guys there, and thank you so much for partnering up with us and being again those credible people in the room that have a professional background. You know what I'm saying? So
Last year's show was amazing, Brian. Like the speakers there, I was tearing up. Like it
Aw,
really motivates you, and it's nice to catch up with people like that too. And no, it was great.
awesome. Well, thank
Absolutely.
you so much. Thank you. Well, again, you guys add value to that stage too, and folks can always partner up with your services. We're just trying to give people the recipe, right, to have a successful business. So right back at you guys. Thank you,
It's
thank you.
very inspiring. Yeah.
Awesome. And Brian, so can you give us a little overview of your background and how you got into the green industry?
Yeah, yeah. So some people have heard my story, so forgive me if you guys have heard me. But really simply, I was cutting grass as a kid, just like so many of us, just push mowing lawns. I grew up in a double wide trailer, Milford, Michigan. As humble as you guys can imagine as a background. No money, no influence, no connections. Nobody in my family ever went to college. Just a regular kid, kind of growing up, maybe middle to low income. And one day, I don't even know the whole reason why. I just wanted to start cutting grass. I remember always wanting to get like Subway sandwiches and buy fireworks. And I was like a 10 or 12-year-old little dude. So I was like, well, I need to make some money. And I remember doing the lemonade stand and the hot dog stand, but I was in the back of this huge subdivision, very large trailer park. So there's no foot traffic. So I would sell like 2 cups of lemonade, and not exactly the most profitable business, So I said, well, if people won't come to me, I guess I got to go out to them. And I just grabbed my mom's push mower, mowed a couple neighbors. That turned into a couple more, and had a decent little business. Probably 20 customers. I was 14, 15 years old. Always had cash in my pocket, and that was really it. And then somewhere along the way, I was like, I need to get a big boy job. And I went to work at Little Caesars. I was 16. I was trying to buy my first car. And ironically enough, talk about a huge pay decrease. I went from making 15 bucks to cut a lawn in 20 minutes to, $7.24 an hour. And then I had to pay this thing called taxes. And, my first check was probably like $90 gross and like $60 net. And I was like, well, this sucks. And so I quickly realized, well, if I'm going to be here, I might as well be good at it and make more money. So I became a shift manager, a crew lead, a co-manager. And then I was 18 and a half, 19, being a store manager. making back then 40 grand a year. Today, 70, 80, 90 grand. And it was a really good job for a 19-year-old kid. My brother was going to school for architecture, 5 years into that thing, nights and weekends, 100-hour weeks, very demanding workload. And that's what I thought college was. I didn't think it was get a business degree and go burn couches, Michigan State style, which some people have a little bit different college experience. I just thought college was like a death sentence in terms of work. And for somebody who didn't really pay much attention in high school, I was not going to pay for the opportunity to fall asleep in class in college. So, and I didn't have 50 grand either back in the day, right? So to me, I took the quick money. I started my quote unquote career, did that for a couple years, 4.5 years. Actually got fired, wrongfully fired. It kind of sucked, but that really pulled the rug out from my sales. And I was 19, 20 and struggling. I didn't know what to do. Well, back in the day, there was monster.com, if you guys remember that website. And I
Mhm.
saw a route manager for True Green, Service Master. I didn't know True Green, no idea who Service Master was, and I had no idea what fertilizing lawns was all about. But I saw the word manager, and anybody who knows a career thing, you never want to go back to entry level. You want to, pick up where you left off. So I thought I'd be managing a bunch of people. I was just managing 20 kids. I could manage people. Well, I did the interview, and the guy's like, "All right, well, we'll see you here at 5:30 in the morning, and we'll get you some rubber boots and a tanker truck." And I went, "Oh my God, what did I just get into?" But all I heard was $11.55. So that was my hourly rate. So I get there, and just to fast forward, I'm spraying lawns, nuking things, burning up lawns. Decent job. I was learning, I was giving it my best, but I was not very good at any of it. But I did appreciate the sales training, the routing, the knowing your numbers, revenue production. They were a big sales organization. And
Yeah.
I learned a lot firsthand, secondhand from that company. And I really did enjoy my stint for 18 months at True Green. What I realized though was working for somebody else wasn't for me. I didn't hate it. I just didn't like it. And one day I've talked about this many times and I wrote a book about this. This is a very pivotal part of my life, as I call it my no homo Baywatch moment. um, I remember cutting grass and across the street there was these two kids and they jumped out of a truck and they probably had a utility trailer and they pulled a zero turn mower off. They mowed a lawn, probably made 20, 30, $40 back in the day. They're in shorts, t-shirt, swigging a Gatorade, listening to some AM FM radio head cans back in the day, right? Because Bluetooth and podcasts and all that weren't even around. And I'm in a tanker truck, no air conditioning. It's 90 degrees. I'm in full PPE, rubber boots, rubber gloves. It's 90 degrees, sticky, sweaty, nasty chemicals all over me, right? And I'm 19, 20, and I'm like, I am not doing this for the rest of my life. And so I saw those guys and I said, well, I can cut grass. I was just doing that 5 years ago. And
Yeah.
literally, folks, that was it. I went to my local dealer, bought a Viking X Mark mower, 5 grand, put on a line of store credit card with Sheffield Financial. Shout out to Sheffield.
Love those
We
guys.
all we all started there. I know you guys look at everybody's books. Everybody's got
Oh yeah.
Sheffield or GE Money Bank, right? And
Mhm.
that was it. I bought a trimmer, a blower. Maybe I even still had some of that stuff back from my little business back in the day. And I started calling all my other old lawn customers back, and I said, "Hey, I'm back in business mowing lawns." And I was doing that on the side while working at True Green, so I could always relate and appreciate the hustle of my guys that are working a job and cutting lawns on the side. I
Yeah.
did that for about maybe a season, 6 months, whatever it was. And then just the last part was the next spring I come back because we all got laid off for about 3 months in the winter from True Green, and I come back in like February and they do this what they call spray training. And I was like, yeah, let's learn, let's get our spray training in, make sure all our paperwork's up to date. And my boss, basically Kevin, back in the day, he goes, "Well, we didn't expect to see you here." Now I just spent 8 hours all day there, and I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, we thought you were cutting grass full time." I said, "No, dude, I still got a part-time business. Of course, I love my job here. I'm not ready to set sail on my own thing just yet." And he goes, well, I guess you don't understand. We replaced a driver with your truck." I have a positive attitude. I was reading self-help books by then, and I was like, well, no big deal, man. Put me in another truck. Now you guys understand context. This is 2005, 2006,
That's great.
2007.
Yeah.
Very different economy. You actually had to interview for a job. And so I was like, well, just put me in a different truck. And he goes, yeah, I don't think you're really connecting the dots here. You don't work here anymore. And I
Oh,
was like, no way. And here it was 18 months ago. I had just had the same conversation. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to be laid off every job every 2 to 5 years. I've heard the stats. I'm going to go figure out this lawn care thing.
yeah.
And that right there was a whole nother like Brian's Law Maintenance 1.0. The first decade was honestly, guys, try, fail, adjust. We had no podcasts, no YouTube, no social media. All of your competition, they were very closed up. Nobody's going to share industry tips or tricks. Um, Not the most illustrious first year or first 10 years. It was a lot of just burning up motors, burning up engines, messing things up, figuring it out along the way, kind of hard knocks.
Yeah.
And there's a whole nother story where a lot of people kind of know my background post YouTube, where I kind of call it like Brian's Law Maintenance 2.0. And that's really been like the last 4.5, 5 years of our life where we really tried to figure this thing out. And we have figured out a decent little business with so much help from the green industry. And right now we're kind of like shifting gears to do Brian's Law Maintenance 3.0. We want to grow a much more successful business. So stay tuned for that to come. But it's been a wild ride, Joseph. I'll tell you that. By the grace of God, we're still here. Some days you look back on it and you go, how on God's earth did we even survive? Or who taught me that? You know what? Oh my God, the stories we could do 2 hours. I've messed this thing up more than all y'all listening combined. Okay. It's been I'm not proud of that. Hopefully you can learn from our mistakes and Carla and Joseph, but it's been a wild couple of years. Obviously met my wife and had some kids along the way, and that's been a huge blessing, but it's been a wild couple of years, Joseph.
Wow.
What do you think was the turning point like over the last 5 years for you?
1000%. That a great question. I always say you need a catalyst for change or catalyst for growth.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
getting married. I met my wife Liz. We were 26, 22, and we were just smitten kittens. Got dated, engaged, married in about 2 year time frame. Pretty fast enough. About 12 months into our marriage, we were broke. She was working a sled job, making 14 bucks an hour. My little lawn business was making like 40 grand a year maybe. And I always joke like she was super materialistic, Carla. Like she wanted a house and clothes, have kids one day. She wanted a car that started when you took the key and turned it on, and it also turned off when you pulled the key out.
Wow.
Like
A lot.
very materialistic, right? So I joke about that, but basically, I just had to man up. I was like, what I'm currently doing is not providing. I need to figure this out, and it just seriously, right place, right time. YouTube somehow came across my or lawn care YouTube came across my recommended feed, and started following some people, and I'm like, whoa, like hold on, somebody was putting out a how-to video, and I'm like, I can learn from that. And then I always watched YouTube. I've always been a big YouTube junkie. And my wife was actually going to make makeup tutorial videos for extra income on YouTube. And one day, there was a camera that I bought her and put under the Christmas tree. Literally emptied her bank account. It was like 800 bucks. It was sitting under the tree for a couple months later. If you guys know my wife, she loves Christmas. Christmas doesn't end in our house until like February or March, if you know what I'm saying. So I said, hey, like, can I grab that camera and like review this video or this mower? I'm about to trade in and buy another mower. She's like, yeah, sure. And folks, I don't think we had a thumbnail or a name for the channel. I didn't have like artwork or graphics. I don't even think I edited the first video. I just literally took the file and uploaded it. It's still our first video. It's still up there.
Wow.
But that was it. And that was a parallel path with us doing YouTube and us growing our lawn care business. And we tried to put out what we were doing that was working. And my gosh, the amount of stuff that I learned from the community to grow has been just phenomenal. I just literally always try to give credit back to you guys and everybody listening in. Like I'm a byproduct learning from all you guys about how to be more successful too. And so there's some parallel paths there, obviously, and a whole story there. I'm on the whole social media thing because I'm the least likely person to do social media. But really, like when I met my wife, we got engaged, we got married. Um, we were living in a 700 square foot apartment. Like it was pretty basic. It was pretty brutal. Um, and that really made me want to own up and man up, and it really did just take care of my wife. And I'm still doing that every day because I think she deserves the world. I promised her the world on that altar, when we got married. And 12 months into this thing, I just realized I was a big liar. And I was like, there's no nice cars. You're not getting an Escalade. We have no money for a house. Our friends had just bought their first starter home or had their first kid.
Yeah.
And we were years away from having that. And we were broke and all of our equipment was old. So I'm like, we've got not only are we in a hole, we're in a big hole. And I heard somebody say recently, when you're the first rule of digging holes, if you're in one, stop digging.
Yeah.
And that's a great line, by the way. And so we had to figure it out. We had to grow up. We had a lot of growing up to do.
Yeah. Wow. No, awesome, Brian. I think one of the biggest things with growing a company, whether you're just starting right within those initial stages or even established companies looking for additional ways to grow. As for marketing, I mean, you probably have hundreds of thousands of followers through your social media platforms and podcasts, stuff like that. What do you find as the best approach for green industry companies?
Great question. I think you really have to figure out what works for you, what works for your market, and what gets you. I always say, like, I'm a big sucker for postcards. I love postcards because my wife and I have bought services, buy things, get things locally and abroad, from postcard marketing. I'm a big sucker for Instagram ads, uh, Amazon, affiliate sales or all that kind of mess. I think the blocking and tackling though is always yard signs, postcards, a good Google My Business listing, and a quality website. If you don't have those three or four things working, they're not sexy, but they do bring in a majority of the leads or the sales or the interest. And I heard a really great guy, Jason Cromley. He's got a tremendous business in Columbus area. He said the number one thing when you're trying to grow to 1 million is with referrals. It's doing quality work. And I think that gets so glossed over. Like, have we even delivered on who we say we are, what we say we do? Like, is the customer not only satisfied, but are they happy and raving fans and willing to refer us to their neighbors or their friends or business partners? Like, I think that's a big misnomer of people like, oh, you just got to market. I go, well, if you're doing crappy work and you're marketing and you have a bad rep, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. Like, so I think you have to be smart with that. But, people, of course, there's outliers, Facebook ads, Google ads, radio, TV, viral this on Instagram or TikTok. Those are the outliers. But if you want to get a first down, I think it's the good old blocking and tackling, postcards, yard signs, website, Google My Business listing. Yeah, that's what I'm seeing work for my company.
Very nice.
And answering the phone if somebody calls, because I feel like that's
Yeah.
huge
Yep.
too. Not a
Or
lot
just
of people answer the phone. Like I was just looking for a contractor the other day for some construction work, and like the first person that answered the phone, I think it was like the sixth person I called. It was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably can get better at that. At least fill out the submission form is what I always suggest people. But if you get those in, you have to email those people back within a half hour. Like,
Yeah.
thanks
Yeah.
for thanks for the inquiry. Would you be able to chat later today at 4 p.m. or or no, this isn't in our service area or our product suite. But you have to get back with people. Yeah,
Yeah.
amen. I've been trying to really get better at that in 2024 here for sure. I can't say I'm always been an ace on that. Because when you're in the field, you're busy, you know?
It's true.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for those that follow you on YouTube, probably well aware, but for those that are not, Ryan visits many large and successful green industry companies throughout the country. And I would imagine that it's quite interesting because just how you mentioned with the marketing, how some things kind of work better for some companies, right? And some different strategies. What are some things that you've seen, as you've kind of traveled across the US in regard to, what are some of these profitable and successful companies doing?
Well, Man, that's a loaded question. We can do 2 hours on that. I have been blessed to go on some of these shop tours and teenager tours and interview some of the guys that have part-time hustles. What I'll tell you, and I'm going to borrow a line from Tom Wheelwright, who's a big fish. He was been a guest on our show. He's a CPA for Robert Kiyosaki, a very prominent individual.
Yeah.
He said a great line on our podcast once. He said, three of the most expensive words in the English language are do it yourself. And what I've noticed the biggest companies have is a great team and a great culture. I
Mhm.
mean, yes, we all have mowers, trimmers, blowers, edgers, skid steers, dump trucks, trailers, and we all spend a significant amount of time on that conversation, screaming at the top of our lungs, who's the better brand? Well, my daddy used steel chainsaws. Hey, fantastic. But Husqvarna makes a good chainsaw too. Whatever, right?
Yeah.
But when you really break down after equipment, what's most important, you'll hear almost everybody say it's the people.
Yeah.
And I've always believed that. I've heard that. I say that. And it's just the truth. Whether it's you and a guy, you and five guys, or you and 155 guys, it really comes down to having a good team and a good culture. And, we've all heard the line, you have to have the right people on the bus and in the right seats on the bus. And I mean, I akin that to you guys. Like, you guys are a 10 in what you guys do. And by having you on my team, well, my team's elevated, right? Like, so I think what I've noticed out there, whether big or small, they have a great team, a great in the field, team, and then also a great back at home office team, and everybody's all equally important, right? I mean, like Carla said, if somebody's calling the company and the receptionist doesn't take the call, well, the sales guy can't sell it, the foreman can't manage it, and the crew can't install it, right?
Right.
And then once the job's done, the controller can't audit it. Like, it's all a team effort. And so I think, man, I could talk about workflow and efficiencies and equipment, and we do on our show and our YouTube channel, all that mess. But at the end of the day, it's just a great quality team, Joseph. And great teams, man, are just where it's at. Whether it's in athletics, business, marriage, right? Are you guys on the same team in your marriage? Like, those are all, I think, a big takeaway. And sometimes people miss that because you're looking for the silver bullet, and you realize, no, it's the people. And I heard somebody say once, like, it's almost a perfect industry, right? Like cutting grass, doing snow, except that you add people. um, I'm sure accounting is it's pretty black and white. Numbers don't usually lie unless somebody's lying on the numbers, right? Which again goes back to people. So accounting would be easy if it wasn't for the people, right? But that's just any business. That's every industry, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
It's true.
those are great points, Brian. And it, the other side of it, the people working, and then you have some of the metrics, right? That you kind of have to track, maybe hold your team accountable, and then the term used a lot, right? Knowing your numbers.
Hmm.
What does that term mean to you?
Knowing your numbers in its simplest form is actually taking a look under the hood of the business. I don't care if you do it once, twice, once a week, once a month, once a year. It just means spending some time looking at the actual financials of the business and the reporting of the business. And that's office time. That's being intentional with looking at a P&L, a balance sheet, an income statement, your cash flow statements. Like, it just means, hey, we run a business. We're not just technicians. And I'll tell you, for 10, 11 years, I was a solid technician, solid sales guy. Knowing my numbers, didn't know, didn't care. Was there a little bit in there to buy some food and make payroll? Sure. Was there a little bit in there to finance a car or a truck? Sure. Could we pad stats and make things look nice if we needed to, have a good week or a good month or even a good year? Sure. Like, we could play the game,
Yeah.
but did I know what I was doing? Absolutely not. And I could really go into that for another minute or two because Carlo asked, "Hey, what changed?" Well, obviously this is a little biased with bookkeepers and CPAs, and this is your guys' background. But what really changed the most was three things. We finally started building a team for myself and my wife back in 17, 18. Three things happened at once. We met a friend who became a mentor and really even a brother, Mike Bedell. A lot of guys know Mike. He's one of my heroes. He's an amazing guy. He'll always be in my good graces, and I can never do enough to repay him. But Mike came in, and he was a back of the house guy. And of course, he's a great technician. He's a horticulturalist and a landscape design guy. He knows the basics and much more, obviously. But he was a very, very good businessman. And I was not. And I would say stuff, and we had just become, we met at a dealer open house of all things. And he saw me carrying my camera. He's like, "What do you do?" And I go, "I have no idea. I make some videos on the side on YouTube." And he goes, "Really?" And so that struck up a friendship, which struck into a couple dinners. But I would say stuff, Joseph, and he would go, "Well, what do you mean by that? Or how do you do that?" And I go, "You know what, dude, I have no idea." And he would say, "Well, how was your QuickBooks?" And I go, "I don't even have QuickBooks." And remember, I'm in like year 10. Okay. He'd say, "Well, how are you billing?" I go, "Oh, just paper invoices." He goes, "Interesting." That's Mike's line. "Interesting." and and I had just started a YouTube channel, and I think we were making like $50 a month on YouTube. By the way, inside baseball, we don't make millions with YouTube. Ask Carl and Joseph; they got our books. um, we started to make some money, but my friend Mike Bedell had the foresight to say, "Dude, I think you're really on a good trajectory for your lawn care business, and maybe if the social media thing takes off and you start making some money, I'd hate for you to get burned. You should really evaluate this and this and this, and maybe think about this, this, and this. And do you have a do you have interest in doing your own books?" I said, "Not really." He goes, "Well, maybe you should hire a bookkeeper." He goes, "What about your CPA?" And I go, "Well, my CPA, yeah, he doesn't really get the social media thing. He doesn't. He's older. He's about to retire." He goes, "Well, maybe you should draft somebody and build a bigger and better teammate in the CPA world." And we did. And we a little bit of luck and a little bit of due diligence, but we partnered up with some great bookkeepers. We partnered up with a great CPA, and my friend Mike's coaching and mentorship, just a couple statements, man, changed my life. And that was really, Carla, to answer your question, twofold. One was we need to grow up and be better business people, but two, how do you become a better business people? And if it wasn't for Mike, if it wasn't for our bookkeepers and you guys, if it wasn't for our CPA, we use Tom Wheelwright's folks. Um, Folks, there's no doubt in my mind that we would have spun ourselves out of business and out of the industry. Like it was, we were probably flatline, and the alarms were going off in the hotel, suite, or the hospital suite of like, grab the doctor, grab the nurse. I just didn't know it. And that's the biggest difference, Joseph. Like we went from just being technicians and slinging mulch and cutting grass and laying stripes, which is all I focused on for 11 years, to, hey, you have to be a business owner. And it's not this grandiose, forever learning process, enigma that only Warren Buffett knows. It's not that bad. It does take some time. It does take some education. It does take some one on ones and humbling the ego and asking for help, a lot of help, to be honest with you. Especially as your business continues to grow or your income grows, you'll probably realize, like I have, that you want and need more help. um, but I was a 0 in business. I was a 8 in being a technician. And here's my analogy, maybe, is what if you were a 5 in business and a 5 as a technician? Well, 5 times 5 is 25, but 0 times 8 is 0, or let's just say 8, right? So the multiplier is being a good business person and a good technician. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you what, honestly, Joe, candid, because I know we don't have too much time left, candidly, it's been an exhausting process, but it's made me a significant amount of money. And my lifestyle is entirely different just 5, 6 years later than where we were. But that took me getting around guys like you and Carla and trade shows and conferences to learn this stuff. So I never want to make it a pitch, like, but I'm just telling you guys my life. Like, if it wasn't for careered and credentialed and educated folks like you guys advising folks like myself, I would have blown myself right out of the business, right out of the industry, and probably the next thing, to be honest with you, too, because I would have took those same poor habits or thoughts to the next thing I did, and just blamed everybody that why I wasn't successful, right?
Absolutely.
I know there's a lot there, but that's just how I feel, and I'm always ever so grateful to be on shows like this to maybe help that Brian's lawn maintenance from 10 or 15 years ago, right? Maybe leave some of those breadcrumbs to help that next guy out. So yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, no, for sure, Brian. Well said. And uh, I know you have a lot of different resources as well that can help people when it comes to estimating and you know, even contracts and different things like that, right? So,
yeah.
I recommend for people to definitely check those out. And what's the best way people can reach out to you, Brian?
Yeah, really simply, brother. We're all over YouTube. Brian's Lot Maintenance podcast, Fullerton Unfiltered. You guys have been on there a handful of times, which is always great. Our live conference in the fall. Check it out. Give it a look. You know, if it's for you, great. If not, no big deal. Equip Expo. Always love hanging out with everybody at Equip Expo. That's always the big Super Bowl. The last thing I gotta say though, really quick, Joseph. If you guys are listening in, here's my plea. I'm not a begging kind of guy, but here's my plea or my ask. If you're the shoebox full of receipts guy, please call Carla and Joseph now. Stop the mower and call them, because I had always had the fear of God of an audit or just even tax time. Do I owe a little bit? Am I getting a little bit? Do I owe a lot? Am I getting a lot? I was a shoebox full of receipt guy for 12, 13, I don't know, years. And that is just not healthy business. And so, glaring elephant in the room, I just say that out of tough love. If you guys are that guy, I was that guy 4 or 5 years ago. You don't have to live in fear. You don't have to play defense or reactionary. You can be offensive. Let folks like Carl and Joseph go to work for you. They didn't ask me to say that. I'm just telling you from my own experience. I was that guy for a long time. And if you got that or other cracks in the foundation, like, you got to fix them. I hate to say it. And I had to excavate, Joe. I had, it's been an exhausting process, but I'm so happy with where the foundation is now. And now we can build that skyscraper. Amen. But I just had to throw that in there because I'm like, Joseph, I remember 5.5 years ago, that was my life. And I can't even imagine running my life that way. No way. So anyway, thanks so much for having me. Thanks so much for all of this, bro. It's been, we're friends. I can't thank you guys enough. You guys do my books and always are advising, and your reporting is second to none. Our private Facebook group membership is always talking about Carla and Joseph in the private Facebook group, talking about your guys' new reporting system and blah, blah, blah. So if anybody's listening in, just shopping around for a bookkeeper, please call them. It's one of the best things we ever did with our business in our life. So yeah, that's all I got, brother.
So much.
Thank you for joining us, Brian.
Yeah. All right,
Thanks.
guys. We'll see you.
Talk
Thanks,
soon.
Brian.